Assistive Technology, how to make it work for you. My name is Kristin Rytter. I am honored to be here today using technology. As you see, assistive technology surrounds me, a customized wheelchair and eye gaze communication system that uses specialized software. My own experience with assistive devices has given me important insight that I have used in my work when helping children with disabilities succeed. Interestingly enough, my work has required me to explore and analyze assistive technology in ways that I wouldn't have otherwise. You will see what I mean. Hopefully, you will learn new ways to make assistive devices work more effectively according to the user's individual needs. Before I got my doctorate in developmental psychology, I worked at a research institute on different projects. One of them aimed to prepare high school students with disabilities to succeed at college. I worked on phase 2 of the Post-ITT project. During the first phase, a book with educational activities was developed. The activities had high school students do something to prepare them for college. For instance, several of the exercises involved research into one's disability and the accommodations that the student would need to thrive academically. One kind of these accommodations was assistive technology, or AT for short. To my dismay, the book had only 1 or 2 exercises regarding this subject. So I took the lead on creating a whole chapter on AT, because it was so important for students to know what assistive technology was, how it could help students with disabilities in an academic setting, how to get appropriate technology to compensate for the limitations caused by their disability. For instance, someone having physical difficulty with taking notes could buy a voice recorder to record class lectures. It is important to notice that something such as a voice recorder is not a specialized piece of equipment, but it can do the trick. Because of this, I also felt that it was important to know how everyday items could be used as a T for several reasons. For one, using everyday items could be much cheaper than a lot of commercial specialized equipment. Secondly, these things tend to be easier to access. Lastly, creating one's assistive technology would empower students to become more self-reliant. For example, someone having trouble grasping a pen could Google unusually shaped pens. They then would see all sorts of differently shaped pens and choose 1 or 2 that might work for them. This would require them to know what they could hold better. Ordering pens online and trying them out could be much quicker and cheaper than having a formal evaluation done by a professional. However, it sometimes is necessary to seek out a professional's opinion. Knowing one's limitations, abilities, and risk factors is crucial. An example of a risk factor would be that holding onto anything for a long time can exacerbate one's arthritis. In this case, it may be prudent to seek out a professional, such as an occupational therapist. From working on a post-ITT project, I learned that many high school students didn't know what their disability was, in what ways it affected them, and what they could do to minimize the effects of their disability. Knowing these things is a part of self-advocacy, and having self-advocacy skills is necessary to find appropriate assistive technology. I realized that the students' parents and teachers thought they were protecting the students by not talking with them about their disabilities. It seems kind of mean or rude to have conversations with them about their limitations. Nobody likes to focus on their weaknesses. I get this. But my disability is not a weakness of mine. It is just a different way of being, that's all. Through my private practice, I have started teaching children as young as 4 and 5 years of age about their disabilities and the accommodations they already used. Yes, I teach little kids self-advocacy skills. I have framed this in positive terms. For example, I have encouraged parents to program their communication devices with some self-advocacy statements. These statements included, I can't use my legs to walk, but I have this cool wheelchair, and I can go fast in it. Or, I don't do well with loud noises, so please talk softly to me. Little kids like being empowered by saying these things. Who wouldn't? So, please, teach self-advocacy skills as early as possible. Promoting self-advocacy is only one of the things I have done through my business called Unique Perspective. At first, I mostly consulted at the children's home and/or school. My staff would drive me to the locations in my accessible minivan. It is important to realize that human beings can be considered as a form of assistive technology, because people can do many things that devices simply cannot. Driving me is one example of this. Another example would be staff translating my eye language to my customers. I spell words and sentences by looking at objects. The letter A is my ankle, and the letter B is a book, and so forth. When I started my business, I didn't have a communication device. Because of this, I needed to schedule my consultations for times when the particular staff who knew my eye language well was working. Even then, although she translated quickly, I could not say everything that I would if I was able to speak. Like many other consultants, I would write a report after the site visits, describing suggestions and learning activities for the children to do. I made these reports more explanatory to compensate for what I could not say during the consultations. I wrote my reports using an ordinary Mac PowerBook with specialized hardware that let me write by tapping Morse code with buttons on either side of my head. Even with word prediction software, I wrote approximately 8 words per minute on a good day. So writing one page took me 3 hours or so. And my reports were 8, 9, or 10 pages. Yep. I spent between 24 and 30 hours just preparing one report. At that rate, I could not take many consulting jobs, especially when I worked on my autobiography or a presentation. But I needed to earn more money. Although it was nice to be able to use a store-bought computer, it was obvious that I needed an eye gaze communication system, a highly specialized and costly piece of equipment. I knew from using a communication device in the past, it would be crucial that an eye gaze communication system met most of my needs. These included being able to have voice input, write papers, and email people, among other things. Before I tried any eye gaze communication systems, I made a chart with these requirements of mine down the left column and what I needed to do them across the top. Okay, call me anal. But my chart helped me focus on my own needs while the vendors tried to show me all of the bells and whistles. I strongly encourage you to list the things that you need to do with assistive devices before seeing some. I got the first eye gaze communication system that I tried several times, mostly because it was the only one on the market 9 years ago that would tolerate my head movements caused by my disability. I use it well, talking like crazy. I believed that I could talk to my customers with it, but didn't meet my other communication needs, enabling me to increase my workload. Well, I don't remember successfully writing with it, but I was still learning how to use all of its features. I remained hopeful. Emailing with it was a nightmare, but I felt that I would find a workaround. Another shortcoming was that the machine was huge. I didn't like it blocking my view in front of me, especially when I drove my wheelchair. But I figured that I would become used to it. So it had 3 kind of major disadvantages. But wait for the icing on the cake. This communication device had no internal battery. I am serious. No battery to speak of. This meant that the device must be plugged into an outlet. Worse yet, the power cord plugged into the bottom of the device. Sometimes the cord just fell out of the device mid-sentence, shutting the machine off. As if this wasn't bad enough, the machine wouldn't turn back on until approximately a half hour later. This ripped it. At that time, a lot of my consulting work required me to follow certain children going from place to place throughout their school days. Sometimes, I would talk to people in the hall while in transit. I could not do my work tethered to the wall by a power cord. Because of this, along with the other shortcomings, I decided to return the device within the trial period. I had my staff email the customer service, listed all of the problems I had experienced, and asked to return it. The company wrote back, minimizing my real challenges and praising their product. I suppose that this was not a surprising reaction from a company. But it still didn't feel real good being on my side of things, needing a communication device to compensate for my limitations and not the other way around. The company also said they believed that it was the right eye gaze communication system for me. They were right in a way. given that it was only the eye gaze tracking system that tolerated my head movements. And I knew this. I also knew other companies were developing eye gaze communication systems. I took my chances and returned my first eye gaze communication system. I then researched other eye gaze communication systems and tried 4 devices, this time with more criteria, such as an internal battery. Another new deciding factor was good and sympathetic customer service. I know this may sound petty. If you stop and think about it, though, it is crucial to have a company to troubleshoot with you and repair your assistive technology in a timely manner. Otherwise, you cannot do what you need to do, like asking for a drink of water. The simple things like this do really matter. Without water, you could become dehydrated and eventually die. So consider company's customer service before deciding on an assistive device. Well, anyway, the company that appeared to have the top-notch customer service was starting to develop an eye gaze communication system, but nobody knew how long before their device would be on the market. From researching their other communication devices, I felt very confident that their eye gaze communication system would meet most of my needs. So, I waited and tried various versions of the eye tracking until I could talk successfully with it by spelling words. I should mention that this communication device would come with a simple-based communication software, sometimes referred to as MinSpeak. MinSpeak is perfectly fine for a lot of people, but I could not wrap my head around it or see how I could ever write my reports with it. At first, I felt that I had to learn how to use it to prove my intelligence. But I finally accepted that I was a natural-born speller, and I loved to spell words. And I could use this communication device to spell. Knowing some of my communication needs were unique, one of my other requirements was that the device's software was customizable. And it was. Hot dog. Since this Prentke-Romic eye gaze communication system would meet a lot of my requirements, I decided to get it. I received funding for it about 7 years ago. I named the device Elise. Just because Elise came with a lot of features that I needed, it didn't mean that I would be successful with it right out of the box. First, I had to build up my eyes muscles to use Elise for the majority of the day. Soon, I noticed that I had a harder time selecting some of the buttons. That's okay, it was good to recognize my limitations with this new eye gaze communication system, so I could find ways to work around my challenges. I discovered several solutions. First, I made my own keyboard by experimenting with what different configuration worked the best with my word prediction. I must have tried 5 different layouts, but I ended up with one that maximized my speed when I talked and wrote. I also programmed some buttons to open applications, such Microsoft Word and PowerPoint, eliminating the need to use the cumbersome mouse. These modifications made writing easier. But it is important to know that I had trouble with emailing people, which I had relied heavily on to conduct my business. Would this be a deal breaker for me? Of course not. I sensed that most of the problem was the email application I used. I asked some people what they used for emailing. Microsoft Outlook sounded the most promising. My staff, who used it, loaded Outlook onto Elise. He configured it how he thought I could use it the best, based on watching me using the other software. With some practice, I could reply to incoming email. Great, the problem was solved. Or was it? There was one little problem. I could not access my address book. This actually was a major problem, because I could not email anyone who had not contacted me first. Oops. I could not email my customers to see how they were doing or to schedule my next site visits. You guessed it, it was bad for my business, but I got an eye gaze communication system to do more business. I was in a real predicament. Or was I? One of Elise's features lets the buttons be programmed with any words, phrases, or sentences. It occurred to me that I could program email addresses into buttons and I could select them. After programming buttons with one email address each, I could email anyone, provided I had their address in Elise. I was able to perform all of the necessary job tasks for my business, talking during consultations, writing reports, and emailing customers in half of the time than I needed before. Doing everything quicker gave me more opportunities. For instance, I could schedule consultations when it was convenient for my customers instead of the only days when I had a staff who could translate my eye language. I had it made. Or did I? Not quite. I had forgotten that I sometimes would present at conferences and guest lecture at colleges until someone invited me to give a talk for an event. For a while, I delivered my presentations in the same way I had done before I got Elise, on my Macintosh laptop. After a while, I became frustrated, because preparing the voice output for my Macintosh took a long time. Elise had a way to program whole paragraphs in a series of buttons. I thought about using this feature. Some of my presentations had 30 paragraphs or more. It meant that I would have 30 or more buttons to look at in a certain sequence. I knew I often became nervous while presenting, causing me to have more abnormal movements. This would increase the likelihood that I would select the wrong buttons throughout my presentations. No good. Knowing this, I searched for software that would let Elise read my speeches to my audiences. There was no such program. But someone created one for me, enabling me to deliver presentations by selecting only 2 buttons. Once again, more new opportunities opened up for me. For instance, I was able to fill in for someone at an Assistive Technology conference with short notice. Isn't Assistive Technology great? We must remember that assistive devices are just machines. We need to know what our disabilities, limitations, abilities, and precise needs are in order to make these machines fulfill our individual requirements. As you just saw, this takes much thought, coming up with real criteria, stick-to-itiveness, trial and error, and willingness to give up if a device can't meet most of your needs. You also discovered that all needs are not created equally. An example of this is that a communication device not having internal batteries trumped everything else. So with time and creativity, I got my eye gaze communication system where I could do everything I needed to run my business. I could email people, talk in my consultations without a translator, write lengthy reports in half of the time, and deliver speeches and even be a fill-in for someone. I could do it all, like the modern-day woman. What more could I ask for? Nothing, right? Think again. One of my loves in life consists of writing creatively. Where does creative writing play a role in my consulting business? It didn't, until I got a burning desire to write a book about a man who my dad had made up when I was a child. In the spring of 2011, I started writing a book about this make-believe man and his boy who had mild cerebral palsy. A year and a half later, I decided to change the plot some, so that the little boy would have severe motor impairment and severe speech impairment. I then had a platform where I could educate families, professionals, and college students going into a disability field about many issues regarding children with severe disabilities. Such issues include nonverbal communication, communication devices, literacy development, mainstreaming, special education, self-advocacy, discipline, feeding tubes, and other controversial topics. Having my eye gaze communication system has made writing this novel much easier and faster. Since I wanted it to be as realistic as possible, I needed to do some research regarding certain subjects. Fortunately, I can access the internet using Elise. So I have done some of my research online. This proved useful. At times, it was clear that I needed to read books on several subjects, such as the possible ways a child with a disability can affect parenthood and the whole family dynamics. With no use of my hands and my reading disability, reading books has presented challenges for me. To my knowledge, Elise cannot read books to me. I had no solution for acquiring the information that I needed to be able to make my novel as realistic as it should be. Or did I? Before I started writing my book, I had gotten a Kindle with text-to-speech capabilities, meaning it would read books to me. A brilliant solution to get the information I wanted from books. It also is an example of how we can use ordinary technology to compensate for our limitations caused by our disabilities. Using ordinary technology can be much cheaper than most specialized equipment would be. With more information regarding parents of children with disabilities, I continued writing my novel. In the summer of 2015, I started thinking about editing and self-publishing it. I discovered that I had written enough for 9 books, possibly. Yes, I said 9 books, potentially. It is a testimonial about how well I got my eye gaze communication system working for me by customizing my keyboard and pages according to my communication needs, limitations, and abilities. If I hadn't spent the time and energy transforming a machine into my own tool, it would never have performed to this magnitude, and I could not have furthered my business in so many ways. Yes, of course, professionals certainly can help you customize your assistive devices. However, the user and the people in their lives know the best what they need the device to do. Don't be shy about telling professionals what you need and don't need in a piece of equipment. If it is at all possible, be involved in customizing assistive devices. This can empower the user in ways that they cannot be otherwise. Writing enough to be able to turn one novel into a series is a perfect example of this. I am pleased to say Book 1, Dandelion Epiphany, Seeds Being Born, came out in print in November. It is sold on Amazon, Lulu, and privately through me. You can reach me at my business email, uniqueperspective@aol.com. Thank you for attending this conference and learning about how low, and high-tech assistive devices could help improve and increase work productivity.